Hi guys, thank you for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll stay with me through most of it. There's some pretty good information in here that could save your life, and I know that sounds really dramatic and clickbaity, but it's the truth. I want to tell you a story about something that happened to me last summer and how maybe you could get some takeaways from that could help you if you end up in the same circumstance I was in. So while I'm telling you the story, I'm gonna do my makeup just because it helps me kind of get through it without getting too, I don't know, I guess emotional is the word, or anxious. It kind of brings me back, but I think it's really important to tell it because you never know who's going to click on this video. So maybe someone will see it, the right person who, you know, hopefully will never need it, but if they do, maybe it'll, you know, stick in their head at the time. So hopefully that makes sense. Every time I try to make this video, I get tongue-tied, and I think it's because it just brings me back to the anxiety of the moment for me. And so I hope you'll understand that this is not the easiest video for me, but I feel really strongly that maybe it'll help someone. So it's worth doing. Anyway, not to get all dramatic, I've already done my eyebrows because I did do this and then restart because there's a fly attacking me, like a little fruit fly, and he went up my nose. Somehow he got out. Anyway, well, let's continue. So the story from last summer, before I tell you exactly that, I should tell you that I grew up in a New England beach town, and every summer we went to the beach, like every day. We would get up, go to the bakery on the way to get some breakfast, and then when we got to the beach, I mean, this is bright and early, we would take our swimming lessons. And yeah, I learned how to swim in the ocean, and that's the only way I learned how to swim. And we took swimming lessons from very young age all the way into our teens, or I did anyway. And you know, and then when I was in my teens, I took life-saving courses, so in the ocean. And so I think it's important for you to realize in this story that I am pretty familiar with these waters, and you know, I'm a very good swimmer and all of that. So, deep breath. So last summer, my husband, myself, and my daughter decided to go to the beach, the very beach I went to every day of my life growing up and learned how to swim at. And it was a beautiful day, but the waves were pretty intense, but this is pretty common for this beach. In fact, that's what people expect when they go there. But I would say they were a little bit more so than usual. So, but you know, the lifeguards were letting everyone in, and I will say they were all lined up on the shore, which usually is a clue that it's a little more dangerous than normal. So it was normal, but a little more crazy. So anyway, but we kind of like it like that because, to be honest, my husband likes to boogie board. My daughter and I like to do what we call jump the waves, where it's like once you get past the point where they're knocking you down, you can kind of ride it, and it's nice. And I love to dive into the wave and come up on the other side because, you know, I think I'm a mermaid. So anyway, so that's what we were doing. My husband was boogie boarding down the beach. My daughter and I were, you know, riding the waves. She was body surfing, and so she ended up about 5 feet behind me, and she was, I would say, up to maybe her hips in the water, and I was up to about here. And that's when I started to feel the riptide. And if you don't know what a riptide is, it's also called a rip current or an undertow. And I don't really know the science behind it, to be honest, but I know that you have to have waves specifically. Probably the bigger the wave, the more of a rip current you're going to have. And it basically causes this current that goes from the shore out to the ocean. And they can go directly straight out, sometimes a little diagonal, and they can be mild all the way to severe. And I would say this is on the more severe side. And I recognize that. I've been in tons and tons of riptides, being that I've been to this beach my whole life, and it's known for that. So it's not unusual. It's not something like, oh my God, I'm stuck in a riptide. Most of them are pretty easy to get out if you know what to do. So I said to my daughter, we're stuck in a pretty bad riptide, and she felt it too. And she's like, yeah, I think we should go back. So she did exactly what you're supposed to do. She was, you know, obviously both of us were still touching at the time. And so here's the shore, and we're out here in the water. When you're in a riptide, you don't want to go against the current. You don't want to go, because it's just, you're expending so much energy and you're fighting this really hard current. So what you want to do is just kind of walk sideways, and then you'll come out of it eventually. So that's what she did. She walked out and went back to shore. I was about to do the same thing, but then I noticed a really big wave coming. Now remember, I'm up to here, so this wave's going to come over. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to dive into this wave, and then I'll, you know, I'll go back. Well, I dive into the wave, I come up, I take a breath, and immediately another one comes, and I do the same thing, and another one comes, and I do the same thing, and then I realize I'm not touching anymore. Okay, so the riptide has now sucked me out farther, and I'm like, oh, not ideal, but not a problem. I'll just swim parallel to the shore like I'm supposed to. And so I start doing that, and at this point now I can hear the lifeguard whistling away, and I know he's whistling at me because I'm too far out, because this riptide is taking me too far out. And so I'm like, yeah, and I'm trying to swim parallel to the shore, but unfortunately the waves were getting huge. Like they were just crashing over me, and one right after the other. Like there was no chance to catch my breath in between. And so having to hold my breath and fight the waves while swimming sideways was really starting to wear me out. I was getting tired, and that's when I started to get a little scared, because I know that's when riptides end up, you know, killing people, is they get tired, usually from fighting the current because they're going straight back to shore. But in my case, it was the waves, and then they panic, and then they, you know, they can't stay afloat anymore. And that's usually what happens. So, so at that point I started to get scared, and I immediately was like, okay, shut that down, because that is not going to help you. Panicking is the worst thing you can do in any emergency situation. And, so push that aside, and I thought, okay, what can I do? And so I thought, well, maybe, you know, this is a wide riptide probably, and I'm over here and I'm swimming this way, so I'm taking the long way, and maybe the end is the other direction. So I'm thinking, okay, this is taking too long, let's try turning around and going in the opposite direction. And which was not a bad plan, it was a good tactic. But the problem was the waves, they just kept crashing over me. And I mean, when I say crashing over me, I mean hard. And I'm running out of breath and getting tired from trying to get out of the wave and all of that stuff. And the more tired I'm getting, I'm basically not making any progress getting out of this riptide. And all the time I just hear that lifeguard just whistling away. And so at this point, I realized I gotta make a decision. I can keep trying to do what I'm doing, and I mean, for all I know, I'm right on the edge of this riptide, you know, and I might get out of it. I'm gonna be exhausted, and it's gonna be close, but I could, feasibly. But my other choice is to ask for help, because if I'm wrong and I can't get out of this quick enough, by the time I ask for help, it might be too late by the time they get to me. So I realize the smart thing to do is ask for help. And let me tell you, that's a tough pill to swallow when you have always prided yourself on being a really good swimmer in these waters and knew what you were doing. I really wasn't excited about that, but I knew I was in trouble, and so that was the smart thing to do. And so I did. So this is the universal sign for, hey, I need some help, right? But because I was so tired at this point, and, you know, I was over my head and trying to fight the waves, and just to keep my head above the water in between the waves, I figured I was going to need that arm. So I'm like, surely one arm will do, right? They'll understand that. No. So I start doing this, and they're whistling. He's whistling, and everyone's just looking at me. I see the lifeguards just like this, come in. And a couple people in the surf just standing there, same thing, come in. And then there was one lady on shore who was like waving. What? I'm not waving. I'm in trouble. Help me. It's crazy what your eyes land on when you're like in, I mean, I'm literally seconds away from drowning here. It's just crazy, but that's when I realized, okay, apparently no one realizes I'm in trouble, so I'm gonna have to use the two arms. Sorry, I kicked the stand. So I decide, okay, I'm going to have to use both arms. And I know I'm gonna go under. And then I'm gonna have to struggle to come back up and probably do it again. And I realized that I probably only have a few of those in me, because there's like no energy left in the tank. So I'm hoping and praying they're gonna get that. I mean, they're all looking at me. How could they not, right? So I do it. Two hands, and I immediately go under the water, wave. I come back up, two hands. Again, I go under the water. After the second time, I was thinking, I don't think I can do this more than one more time. Like 1 or 2 times is all I got left. And if someone doesn't figure this out and come out here right now, I'm done for. And the third time I come up, I hear, I think she needs help, someone says. And I see my daughter running to the lifeguard, and I see this man out of the corner of my eye swimming furiously towards me. Thank goodness for him. What an angel. So I go under again, and when I come back up, I hear the man say, "Do you need help?" And I say, "Yes." And he gives me his arm, and I grab it, and he yanks me sideways. And sure enough, I was like a foot away from the edge of that rip current, and he pulled me right out, and I was like, but I was just too tired to swim or anything at that point. So he just kind of started pulling me in, and then immediately after, I hear the lifeguard say, "Grab the buoy," and I see the orange buoy, and I grab it, and then it was like someone started playing the Baywatch music, because I looked up and saw the most beautiful man-child I've ever seen in my life. I say man-child because he was in his 20s, but dang, he was gorgeous. He had the bluest eyes I've ever seen, a beautiful tan, lovely hair, I mean, nice hair, and great abs, couple tattoos. I mean, he was my type in my 20s for sure. So that's all I could think of. In that moment, I was like, dang, if I was 20s again. It's weird what you're thinking, right? I'm like literally just almost drowned. Okay. So, anyway, they dragged me to shore, sit me down, and I realized pretty quickly that no one knows what has happened to me. No, like everyone's like kind of confused. And I had girls coming over to me asking me like, was there a shark, you know? No. And, you know, right after they pulled me out, I heard all the lifeguards talking, and they decided they were going to shut the beach down because I guess I wasn't the first person they had to go who got in trouble that day. So they decided to pull everyone out of the water. And, you know, no one knew why. No one could figure it out. They thought there were sharks. That's what they thought was going on. So, you know, my husband had no idea any of this was happening to me. None whatsoever. He was off to the side boogie boarding. And when they pulled everyone out of the water, he comes over and he's like, oh, what happened? Why are they pulling everyone out? And so then my daughter's like, you didn't see him drag mom out of the water? And he didn't. And I said, you didn't hear them whistling away at me? And he's like, I did actually. And I knew they were whistling at you. But he's like, I thought it was because you were too far out and you didn't want to come back. And you looked really annoyed. And I realized, well, you know, in his defense, I do that. I tend to swim out farther because I like that, you know, after the waves crash you, I like that sweet spot is what I call it, where you can kind of just ride the wave like that. And sometimes they don't like that. You're too far out, and so they'll whistle away, and I get a little annoyed. I do what they say, but I still get annoyed. And so in his defense, that's what he was thinking. And he said, the look on your face was you were annoyed. You didn't look scared. You looked annoyed. So, and I was like, well, yeah, because no one was coming to get me. So yes, I was perturbed. But I guess I pushed that panic away so well that I showed zero fear on my face. Yeah. So that's crazy. I guess that's why no one was coming. But anyway, so they closed the beach down. I rested enough. I was fine. We went home. And it really shook me up. I tried to play it off like, nah, no big deal. I would have got out of it, you know, eventually. But, you know, I was getting tired, so I asked for help. But the truth was, I knew in my heart that I was in deep trouble. I was in really big trouble. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have asked for help. So, it really, really shook me up because I thought that would never happen to me. And, you know, it's one of those moments where you think you have control over something and then you realize you really don't, not as much as you think anyway. And it's disconcerting, you know. And so I kind of had a little PTSD from it. You know, when I got home from the beach, the first thing I did was jump in the pool, and I sank to the bottom and I held my breath for as long as I could. And then I did all these laps because I wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't me, that like I still got it, you know. And I did. I was fine. So it was just, you know, the circumstance I got myself in where I was too far in and the waves were just crashing too hard in the wrong place for me. And that's what, you know, happened. Now, in retrospect, there was a lot of things I could have done so that I wasn't in that situation. And I'm going to talk to you about some of those things along with the recommendations for riptides in case you're ever in that situation. And I really hope that you're not. But in case you are, knowledge is power, you know. So, first of all, why am I telling you all of this? Because a couple weeks ago, I heard a story, and you may have also, a really sad one, about a family who was vacationing in Florida, and I think they said 6 kids, and the parents were out swimming, and they got caught in a riptide, and they passed away. And it was like a knife to my heart. Like, I just was like, ugh, I felt physically ill. And it was so sad. And of course, it brought me right back to my experience. And, you know, all that, those feelings came back of anxiety and just, I don't know. But the first thing I thought of is, you know, I have this channel now, and I only have 50 subscribers, but you never know who's, I mean, I have enough views that you never know who's gonna click on it, right? And who's gonna watch it. And I'm a firm believer that things are put in front of us sometimes so that we see what we need to see. So I felt compelled to do this video because I'm like, maybe the right person will see it and get some information that could potentially save their life. I mean, I know that sounds really dramatic, but it's the truth. Because if you don't know about riptides, if you don't know how dangerous they can be, if you don't know how to get out of them or what to do, then yeah, it's easy pickings, right? Like if you're in that position, how are you supposed to get out of it if you don't know anything about it? And a lot of people don't, because if you don't live on the coast, you know, why would you? And even if you do, I know tons of people that live around here that don't know how to get out of a riptide, that don't know much about it. It's just because I grew up on that beach. I took life-saving classes, and yeah. And you know, since my kids were little, I have been telling them, and I still do to this day, they're 26 and 21, and if we go to the beach, or if they're going with their friends, I harass them, like, tell me what you do if you get caught in a riptide. And then they go, yeah, swim sideways parallel to the shore. If you get tired, float, ask for help, you know. And they always roll their eyes. Well, now they don't, because they're like, wow, if that could happen to you, Mom, that could happen to us. So now they pay attention. Now they listen. I mean, they always paid attention, but they always thought I was being ridiculous. It's ironic that I'm the one that got pulled out. And I'm glad it was me and not someone else that wasn't as good a swimmer. That, you know, did know something about riptides so they didn't panic, that kind of thing, because that would have been terrible. So, so that's why I'm telling you, because it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be. First of all, you don't have to get stuck in a riptide. And second of all, you don't have to succumb to it if you do get stuck in one. There are rules, I guess you would say, or lessons of my story. Like, I would like to tell you what I did right and what I did wrong, so that, you know, if that's ever the case for you, you'll know. So let's start with something I did wrong. I suggest that if you are going to the beach and you know it's a beach, or even if you don't know, look it up, but a beach that has waves, then there's possibilities for riptides. So you can look up online the beach report, like what's going on? Is there a riptide? Is there dangerous sea life out there? What's going on? If you can't find it out online, when you get to the beach, every public beach should have a flag system where it will tell you what's going on in there. So green is you're good to go, it's minimal risk. And I say minimal because no matter what, when you go in the ocean, there's a risk that someone may not know to warn you about, right? That's just the way it is, but it's minimal. Nothing we can foresee. Blue or purple is dangerous marine life, so like sharks or Portuguese man of war, jellyfish, that kind of thing. Yellow is dangerous riptide, take caution. That's what it was that day for me. I did not look it up. I did not notice the flag. I'm not even sure if, in my case, noticing the flag would have made any difference, because in my mind, I was like, I got this. So the cockiness kind of got to me. I don't know if it would have helped me, but it definitely, knowing ahead of time for most people, and for me now currently, because I've learned this lesson, that can be a very useful tool in deciding what is appropriate for your level of swimming, you know, how far in you're gonna go, having a plan before you go in, or if you go in at all. So, yeah, that's important. And if you don't, and usually there's a key there next to the flag areas, or when you first come on the beach, that tells you what the flags mean. The next one up from yellow is red, and that means very dangerous. Highly don't recommend you don't go in. And then double red is you are absolutely forbidden to go in because it is a death trap. So when I went in, it was yellow. When I came out, it was red, and then they made it double red. So, which basically because they were just closing the beach. So check your flags, check your conditions. And if you can't see flags or anything, ask the lifeguard. It's a 2-second conversation, and it could really make the difference. So there's that. The next thing that I did do right was I went to a beach where there were active lifeguards. And that is something I do all the time, most of the time. Mostly because of sharks, if I'm being honest. This beach isn't really known for sharks too often, but they do sometimes show up. And I figure the lifeguards can see them way before I can, so. But yeah, no, it's good for them to be there, because if there is anything like a riptide or something like that, and you need help, there they are. So I typically will try to stick to where the lifeguards are. And so that I did right. Now, here's the thing. Just because there's a lifeguard on the beach, say they're way down the way, that doesn't mean they're gonna be able to help you. Make sure you are in a guarded area. So like, the reason why I say that is this family that was in Florida, from what I read, there were lifeguards on the beach, but they were way down and they were not in a supervised area. So the lifeguards actually did see them going in the water and knew there was a bad riptide. They got in their little buggy and drove down there, but by the time they got down there to warn them, it was too late. They had to pull them out and they needed CPR, and it didn't work. So that's why I say make sure that it is a guarded area, not someone way down the beach, because they may not see you, they may not hear you, and they may not be able to get to you in time, even if they do. Third, if you do end up in a riptide, sorry, I did do this correctly. If you do end up in a riptide, don't panic. It's a huge rule for any emergency situation for a reason, because when you panic, all logic goes out the window and you just do what you feel is instinctual, and a lot of times that's not what's going to get you out of it. So with riptides specifically, people will then just start trying to swim for shore, and you're literally fighting that really strong current, and most of the time you're not going to win, and you're just going to expend all your energy, and then you're not going to be able to swim out of it like you need to, or be able to swim back to shore, or be able to just stay afloat. So panicking, push it away, and remember the rules. The next I also did was, I tried anyway, is if you are in a riptide, swim parallel to the shore. So sideways, not against the current, sideways. Eventually you'll get out. My problem was the waves were just pummeling me, and so I just wasn't able to get over there fast enough. What would have helped me that I did not do was staying more shallow. Being up here, I was like, oh, my feet still touch the ground, but the second I dived into that water, then that current was able to take me. And that's what really got me. It's over my head, and now I'm having to fight the waves and swim sideways, and it was just too much to deal with. If my feet were touching, it would not have been an issue. I would have been able to just walk out. It would have been hard. Like, I would have got a good leg workout that day, but I would have been able to do it. But I went too far, too far. What is happening? There's another weird noise. Okay, am I losing it? So anyway, I would have been able to walk out, but being this high, it doesn't take long for you to be this high. So stay low, stay waist high. And the other thing I did do right is I asked for help when I knew I was in trouble right away. I didn't, get too embarrassed, or like, I thought the right thing to do in this moment is ask for help and push all ego aside. And so, yeah, that worked out for me. Thank goodness for that guy, because I don't know if that lifeguard would have got there in time, to be honest. But as cute as he was, but I made it. It makes me incredibly sad when I see, I don't know why I'm putting my mirror away because I still have more makeup to do, but it makes me incredibly sad when I hear of anyone drowning at all. But when people get caught in riptides, I read that as of when I heard that story, which I think was about 2 weeks ago, 11 people had died in riptides this year. And that may not seem like a lot when you think about how many people are in the country, but it's 11 people too many. And I also think it doesn't have to happen. It's not like, oh, if you get in a rip current, oh, well, that's it, no getting out of it. That's not true. We just go sideways, right? We ask for help. We are with lifeguards so they can help us. We don't panic, like all these things, right? Knowing these things will save your life if you're in that situation. The other thing is, you don't have to get into a riptide to begin with. Knowing, talking to lifeguards, finding out what the flag is, maybe not going too deep. All these things can help keep you from getting into the riptide to begin with. So, it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to be that way. So it is something that, obviously Mother Nature, we can't avoid riptides existing, but we can try to stay out of them. And if we get in one by accident, we can get out of it, whether we need help or not. And that is the most important thing that I wanted to get through to you today. You may already know all of this. Ooh, sorry. You may already know all of this. I don't know. But in case you don't, I hope you've listened long enough to at least get that from it. It's super important. And I just want everyone to have a happy, safe summer. I do have one other story. There's no moral to the story, but I don't know. Just to kind of lighten things up maybe a little bit. And I still have more makeup to do because I talk more than I'm doing, let's do it real quick. All right, and let's do the makeup real quick. Like I'm okay. I'm gonna do my eyelashes right now and tell you the next story, which is just sort of off the cuff. I didn't expect to do it, but I thought my makeup would be done by now because I'm not doing really a big to-do. I don't know. It's hard to talk and do something else at the same time. I don't know why, but it is. So my other water story that I'm going to tell you is when I was a kid. I want to say I was about 10, 11, around there. And we were down at the beach taking our swimming lessons. And after the lessons were over, you know, we would just swim and have fun with everybody. And we were probably some of the older kids that were there. Most kids stopped taking swimming lessons once they figured out how to swim. But my friend and I, we kept taking them. And we're taking the more advanced classes. And anyway, so it was after the lessons were done. So it was like a mixture of ages, hanging out, playing in the water. And we were definitely one of the more older ones. And they had this raft out there. And we would learn how to dive there. So my friend and I and a bunch of little kids were on the raft. And we start to see huge, I don't know what they call a large amount of Portuguese man-o-war. Like, you know, if they're a pod, I'm looking this up. Sorry, I'll get right back to you. A group of jellyfish is called a smack or a smuck. Weird, right? So anyway, a smack of Portuguese man-o-war were coming in from the ocean, and we could see this on our raft. So we told the little kids, stay on the raft, and we're gonna go to shore and let the parents know that this huge smack of jellyfish was coming our way, and it was dangerous because they sting like a dickens. So her and I do our newfound, you know, learn how to dive in there, start swimming for shore, and then I see something out of the corner of my eye, and there's a giant Portuguese man-o-war, and I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're terrifying. So they're huge, and they have these big jelly sails that stick out of the water so that it kind of pushes them, and their tentacles are really long, like I think like up to 20, 30 feet kind of thing. And if those tentacles get you, sorry, my light shut off, then you don't just get one sting, you get wrapped up in that tentacle. You got a million. It's like being stung by a whole hive of bees, right? So I'm like, ah! So I had one on this side, and then my friend is farther up ahead of me, but to the left, and I go to turn my head to be like, oh my God, there's one. And then I see more on the other side of me. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just keep swimming. I don't look at them. I just swim. I get to shore, thank God. And my friend and I both make it, and we go running up to our parents on the beach, and we're like, oh my God, there's all these Portuguese man-o-war. They don't believe us. We just risked our lives to come tell you this, and they don't believe us. This is the life of a Gen X, right? Gen Xer. They're like, what do you mean? And we had lovely parents. I don't want to say that we don't. They were just like, what? What do you even know about Portuguese man-o-war? Have you ever even seen one? We're like, they're Portuguese man-o-war. And we're trying to, you know, convince them. And then you hear this blood-curdling scream. And we realize one of those kids that we told to stay on the raft jumped on top of one of those jellyfish, and those tentacles got wrapped around them. So I don't know who went in there to get them. I think there might have been a lifeguard. There must have been. someone went in and got him, and when he came out, I'll never forget it for as long as I live, he had like these huge circular welts all over his body, like covering his body. It was terrifying. They had to take him to the hospital, and in the end he was okay, but he had a lot of scars. And wow, and thank goodness he didn't have an allergic reaction to it, because you could very easily go into anaphylactic shock if you do. And of course, it's not like you'll know you have that, because it's not like every day someone gets stung by a Portuguese man. So thank goodness he was okay. But yeah, it was crazy. And then we were like, told you. And our parents felt a little silly that they didn't believe us. But, and you know, I've never forgotten that to this day. And her and I never let our parents forget it either. Remember when you didn't believe us? There was Portuguese man of war there. All right, I'm just going to do some, I'm not going to even do under eyes. What do you think of that? Living wild. I'm just going to do some foundation. I'm just using the CC Nude Glow. Not really, I might run an errand or two, so whatever. I just kind of wanted to do this at the same time, thinking maybe it would help me get through the story, because like I said, I tried it before, and I don't know, I get tongue-tied, and I don't know. And then I started to think, like, does someone upstairs not want me to tell you this? But that makes no sense. So yeah, I'm just gonna do this, and wish you guys a really happy summer, safe summer. I hope you're doing some fun things. So a lot of people would ask me after this thing happened to me last summer, you don't go back in the water, right? And my answer is, of course I do. Because I love the ocean. I have always loved the ocean. You know, if I could be an animal, I'd be a dolphin. Like, that's just who I am. So I, of course, was nervous the next time I went in, but I knew I was going to, because there was I'm not going to let one incident that happened rob me of something that brings me a lot of joy, you know. I'm just not. Joy is not the easiest thing to find in this life sometimes. And so when you find something that brings you joy, don't ever let anything rob you of it, is my feeling on the matter. Especially fear. So, I still go in the ocean. I still love it. But I am a little more cautious when it comes to riptides now. And, you know, it's funny, because when they thought it was a shark, my first thought was, I'll take a shark over that riptide any day. Because more than likely, the shark would leave me alone. Riptide don't care. So.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay, Siri, I wasn't talking to you. Wow. Just gonna throw on a little bit of blush and a little bit of, what do you call it? Bronzer or highlight. I don't know if this is a highlight or a bronzer or what it is. I don't know. But that's what I'm gonna do. Okay. This is the Double Dipper by Half Caked. I really love this. And by the way, this is the worst get ready with me video. I am well aware of it. I am not really doing a great job with my makeup. But again, the point of it was just to kind of distract me from being overly emotional or, you know, anxious. And I think it did. So, you know, that was the point. And look, the makeup's not that bad. Lastly, I'm gonna do a little, what do you call it? Just a little lip gloss. I'm gonna use my Burt's Bees lip gloss. And Doesn't really have a color. More like just a, maybe I'll do just a little bit of a lip pencil with it. What is this lip pencil? I got this on Temu. I don't mind the lip products that much. Especially for something like this, where you're just kind of getting a little bit of color. I mean, I don't know how you could go wrong with a lip pencil, to be honest. Oops. As I say that, I go drawing on my face. All right, good enough. Just gonna do a little spritzy spritz and call it a day. Thank you so much for listening and getting with me, going this far with me. Does that make sense? And you know, watching this far into the video, I really appreciate it. And I really hope you have a fantabulous, safe summer full of joy and love and peace. So I'm gonna shut that off and I will say mwah, mwah, mwah. Love you. That was a terrible kiss. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye-bye. Thanks.